Hello, friends. How are you? All right. There's a video I saw. I was watching a Channels television interview. There's an interview on Channels television today, and on that interview was Senator Ireti Kingibe. So I followed the interview um, from the beginning, and then during the course of the interview, she made a statement, or should I call it a comment, or should I call it an alleged claims that the FCT minister, Wike, is collecting loans without Senate approval. And when I heard that, in fact, I have to go and watch that particular clip, that particular section again, about 4 times to make sure. And she said vividly that she's not alleging that that is true. On their That's how she get to know about it is during one of their meeting or something, like they were passing through documents, and then she came across all the debts that FCT minister was collecting without Senate approval. And she equated or give it an example that even the president wants to borrow a loan, always come to the Senate to get consent. So if the president always seek the Senate approval to get any loan, then a minister that is appointed is collecting loan without Senate approval. How can that be? You know, when Wike was appointed as an FCT minister in Abuja, I know something was wrong because the way Wike is running Abuja as a state on his own. Now Abuja has his own budget separately now. There's a monies allocated to Abuja separately. Wike can write any check, do anything without uh, any question. So that is why you could see Wike can confiscate anybody's land, allocate to his friends or to his family members or to his cronies without any questioning. So the way Wike is running Abuja is running as a state extension of Port Harcourt and Rivers. That's an extension of Rivers in Abuja. Not only that, I have noticed Wike is like we have two presidents. Sometimes I ask myself, do we have two presidents in Nigeria? Because sometimes you see Wike welcoming ambassadors, foreign ambassadors coming to see him. So and I keep asking, is that normal? Is that normal? So when I heard that Wike, when I heard Ireti Kingibe saying that Wike is collecting loans without approval, and I said no, I have to speak about it. And on speaking about it and asking myself series of questions, Nigeria, this administration want to loot Nigeria. That is, they want to drain everybody's dry. There's a lot of impunity, disregard to the law. In fact, disregard to the law. Who is going to query them? Wike is controlling the judiciary. Tinubu is controlling the legislator, his arms. So all the institutions have been captured. Nobody can ask them any questions. And I say, I'm going to rebuke that particular claim that Wike is collecting loan on what purpose? As what? As a state governor or as a president? To seek and get loan without going to the even as much as I despise that Senate legislator, but the symbolism of going to seek for approval means a lot. But if you are going to a minister appointed, you are not elected, you are appointed, going to obtain a loan and no Senate approval says a lot about this country. So I'm going to play the video. I'm going to play the video. Is about 5 minutes. Okay, the Kingibe interview on channels. You're gonna watch it now. Just about 5 minutes. Just be patient. Watch it towards the end. You see where she made that claim, and then after the video, I will return back and then, as usual, give my own strongest rebuke to that particular assertions that Wike is collecting loans without Senate approval. So, friends, I want you guys to watch the video right now, and I'm going to see you back at the end of that video. Okay? All right. See it. Watch it now.
You're saying that he's been taking loans without approval by the Senate?
I am definitely saying he's been taking loans without the approval of the National Assembly. I don't know about the House, but certainly not the Senate. Now, why do I know that? I was reading somewhere. Debt Management Office has those loans taken from August 2023 to March 2026. I know that Wike has never, if anybody contradicts me, they should bring the votes and proceedings of the day that Wike came to the National Assembly to ask for approval for anything. The president from whom he derives his powers brings his request for loans, appointments, everything. And Wike's powers cannot be more than the powers from which he derives his own.
Hello, friends. Welcome to my page once more. It's nice to see you guys. This video is all about Wike, about the loan he's collecting without Senate approval. All right. So I don't know if the law requires a legislative oversight. Why is the FCT minister financing not being fully disclosed? That is the question I would put at the center of this response or this rebuke. The Wike question: who is watching the money? Senator Ireti Kingibe has raised a very serious allegation concerning the financing of the Federal Capital Territory under Minister Nyesom Wike. And before Nigerians dismiss it as merely another political quarrel between two politicians, we should pause for a minute. Because the issue is not whether Ireti Kingibe likes Wike or Wike hates Ireti Kingibe. It is not whether Wike likes Kingibe also. It is not whether Kingibe belongs to the opposition. All right? It is not whether Wike is politically close to President Tinubu. The question is much bigger. Who has the legal authority to borrow money on behalf of the Federal Capital Territory? And where is the legislative oversight? This is where the facts become important. The FCT is not an ordinary state. Under Section 299 of the Nigerian Constitution, the National Assembly exercises legislative power over the FCT, effectively performing the functions that a state House of Assembly performs elsewhere. Therefore, FCT finances cannot simply be treated as the personal financial affairs of a minister. Wike is a minister. He is not the owner of Abuja. He is not the owner of the FCT revenue. He is not a governor with a personal mandate to borrow money. He is a public officer exercising powers derived from the Constitution and legislation. Okay? And that distinction is fundamental to democracy. So, can a minister simply borrow money? Can a minister simply borrow money? Not in the sense suggested by the allegation. The DMO's borrowing framework makes legislative authorizations and statutory procedures central to public borrowing. Okay? For external federal borrowing, Section 21 of the Debt Management Office Act provides that loans term must be laid before and approved by the National Assembly before the loan can be obtained. For FCT borrowing, the DMO guidelines specifically contemplate, okay, FCT Executive Committee approval, all right, FCT Executive Committee approval, legislative resolutions or authorization, the amount and purpose of the proposed loan, okay, terms and repayment arrangement. I don't know if you guys are following me. Terms and repayment arrangement, an applicable appropriations or another authorizing law, and financial documentations, which is the Debt Management Office Nigeria. So we'll be aware of all these details. So if there is indeed a loan contracted by the FCT without the legally required authorization, that would be a very serious matter. That would be a very serious matter. But we should not make the leap from, okay, the FCT budget did not disclose its financing source adequately for now. All right. I repeat, we should not make the leap from the FCT budget did not disclose its financing source adequately to Wike definitely borrowing illegally. Okay. The first is documented. The second requires evidence of a particular borrowing transactions, and that is why the Senate should not be silent. This is where I would strongly challenge the National Assembly. In May, senators themselves identify the problem. The 2.285 trillion FCT budget was passed even though lawmakers raised concerns about the absence of detailed revenue profile. Senator Adetokunbo Abiru questioned where the money would come from, while Senator Sani Musa warned that approving expenditure without a financing framework could create room for borrowing or overdraft without adequate legislative oversight. That was contained in Premium Times of Nigeria. And Senate President Akpabio acknowledged the concern and directed that the FCT revenues profile is supplied. All right? That should not be the end of the story, friends. It should be the beginning. Because 2.285 trillion is not small money. The Senate approved 2026 FCT budget allocated approximately. Now, 1.741 trillion to capital project, 378.231 billion to overhead, and 165.775 billion to personnel, for a total of 2.285 trillion in the budget. So when government is spending trillions of naira, citizens have a right to know. Citizens have a right to know. Where did the money come from? How much came from internally generated revenues? How much came from federal allocations? How much came from previous balances? How much came from borrowing? Who authorized the borrowing? Who is the lender? What is the interest rate? What is the repayment period? What project is the money financing? Who signed the agreement? What happens if the FCT cannot repay? Those aren't opposition questions. Those are legitimate questions. They are democracy questions, and they should be answered. Now, the most dangerous thing will be to make this a party issue. All right? The most dangerous thing is to make this a party issue. And here, I agree with the spirit to Kingibe's concern. Even though her specific allegations still need documentary verifications, suppose Kingibe were APC, suppose Wike were PDP, would the law change? Would the law change? And to answer that question, no. So suppose Wike join the opposition tomorrow. Okay, suppose Wike join the opposition tomorrow. Would borrowing without legislative approval suddenly becomes illegal? All right. Would borrowing without legislative approval suddenly becomes illegal? No. Suppose Kingibe became FCT minister tomorrow. Would she have the right to borrow outside the statutory framework simply because she was in government? The answer is no. Okay? Same answer, no. The law cannot have an APC version and then an opposition version. That is precisely what the rule of law means. Okay? That is precisely what the rule of law means. And this is where Nigeria's democratic problem becomes even deeper. Nigeria's problem is not simply that politicians sometimes break the rules. They do frequently. The bigger problem is that Nigerians increasingly perceive that the enforcement of rule depends on who you are and who knows you. That is not building democracy, and that is not building a nation. We are institutionalizing fraud and the disobedience to the rule of law. When an ordinary Nigerian violates the regulations, the machinery of the state can become extremely efficient. But when politically powerful people are accused of wrongdoing, Nigeria sometimes sees investigation delayed or dragging up their feet. Institutions become cautious. All right? Political allies defending one another. Okay? Then the parliamentary oversight becoming selective. That is not nation building. That is not putting faith in the Nigerian citizens. Okay? That creates something more dangerous than corruption. We are destroying the fabric of our institutions. Okay? We are destroying the fabric of our institutions. Okay? It creates cynicism. Cynicism begins to believe the law is for the poor. The powerful are untouchable. If you have political connections, nothing happens to you. Whether every such perception is factually correct, is beside the point. Does the FCT meter has the statutory power to go and seek for a loan without the Senate approval? A democracy cannot survive indefinitely when the citizens lose faith in equal accountability. But let others also be fair to Wike. Let me also be fair to Wike. I want to balance the equation. I always like to balance the equation, argue for and against. Okay? Let us also be fair to Wike. You guys are the listeners. This is important. Wike has presided over an extraordinary infrastructure spending program in Abuja. Even some senators who question the FCT financing framework praises his infrastructure program. Deputy Senate President Bridge Breen, Senator Abdul Ningi, and also Senate Minority Leader Abamoro all publicly commended aspects of his performance. That was contained in Premium Times of Nigeria. So the argument should not be Wike is building roads, therefore he must be corrupt. That would be intellectually dishonest. The proper argument is good projects do not eliminate the requirement for lawful financing. A road can be necessary. Okay, a road can be necessary. A bridge can be necessary. Excuse me. A bridge can be necessary. All right. A hospital also can be necessary. A railway can be necessary, but the government must still answer those questions. How was it financed? Was it budgeted? Was the borrowing authorized? Okay. Was the procurement lawful? Was the procurement lawful? What did it cost? Who received the contract? Okay. Who received the contract? What are the repayment obligations? Okay. That is what accountability means. It is not persecutions. It is not opposition party playing politics. That is what accountability means. Now, here is where the Senate has a particular responsibility. The Senate cannot simply approve a multi-million naira budget and later complain that the financing details were missing. Okay? Parliament is not supposed to be a rubber stamp legislative. If senators believe the revenue profile is inadequate, they should demand it. If the suspect borrowing occurred outside the approved framework, they should investigate it. If the minister has complied with the law, the investigation should prove it. Okay? If he has not, the investigation should expose it. Either way, we must do have our due diligence. Either way, transparency wins. Transparency wins. Trust is gained when all these questions are answered. And if Kingibe's claim is wrong, then Wike should welcome an audit. That is the simplest answer. That is the simplest answer. If the minister has complied with every legal requirement, publish the document. Show Nigerians the borrowing approvals, the appropriation provisions, the financing agreements, okay, the legislative resolutions, okay, and the DMO approval. Also, the repayment schedules. The repayment schedules is as important as the entirety of the whole document and the source of the funds. Then the allegation collapses. But if the document reveals otherwise, then the issue became far more serious. That is why the proper response to an allegation involving public debt should not be, she is an opposition member accusing you wrongly. It should be, here are the documents. Here are the documents. The real question: has Nigeria normalized impunity? I said it earlier in my intro. Has Nigeria normalized impunity? This is where your broader argument or our broader argument becomes more powerful. Nigeria did not suddenly become a country where institutions are weak. This has developed over decades. Military rule weakened democratic accountability, and then politicians take advantage. Oil revenue concentrated enormous financial power in government. Other sectors are forgotten. Political patronages created network of loyalties. The middle class, the poor children are left behind. Corruption weakened institutions. The poor visit the jail. Electoral competition become extremely expensive. The educated are left behind. And political parties increasingly become vehicles for acquiring power rather than institutions for developing the policy. That is not nation building. The result is political loyalty can sometimes become more valuable than institutions' loyalty. And that is extremely dangerous. When political loyalty becomes more valuable than the institution loyalty, that becomes more dangerous. A senator should not protect a minister because he belongs to the same political group. An opposition politician should not accuse a government official simply because they are political enemies. Both sides should be demanding or defending the law. What if Wike is in the APC camp? That makes the optic even more uncomfortable. That makes the optic uncomfortable, that he is seeking loans without Senate approval. Because Wike is a former PDP governor and he currently serves as a minister under President Tinubu APC-led federal administrations. Kingibe now is aligned with the opposition ADC. So when an opposition senator accuses a government minister of financial impropriety, the natural question becomes, will the institution investigate the allegation objectively? Will the institution investigate the allegation objectively? Not because Kingibe is necessarily right, not because Wike is necessarily wrong, but because independent verification is the only legitimate answer of transparency. Let's look at the worst possible outcome. The worst possible outcome would be Kingibe make an allegation, that cannot be substantiated. Or Kingibe make an allegation, Wike dismisses it. The Senate ignores it. The government says nothing. Okay? No document are released, no audit occurs, no committee investigations. And eventually everyone moves on. Is that building institutions? That is not building institutions. That is empowering an individual over an institutions. That is how impunity grows, not always through dramatic corruptions. Sometimes it grows through silence. Sometimes it grows through silence. This is how country loses the rule of law in the first place. First, it's only a small violation. You hear it from the whispers in the corridors of power, oh, it's only a small violation. Then it's one of our people. All right? Oh, he's one of our people. Then don't embarrass the government. This is what I'm going to be hearing. Don't embarrass the government. Then the opposition is only trying to score political points. All this is what we are going to be hearing from the government side of the equation. After that, you're going to be hearing everybody does it, and eventually the law becomes optional for the powerful. The law becomes optional for the powerful. That is the point at which democracy becomes hollow. I don't know if you guys are following my point. That is how, okay, the point at which democracy becomes hollow. I want you guys to, once you guys finish watching this video, there's a video I dropped about Nigeria. Please go and watch that video. Because most of the things I'm saying here, I still have some of them in those videos. Okay? Now, because democracy is not merely president, senate, and elections, democracy is power constrained by law. Now, my strong rebuke, here is the statement I will use in this video. Senator Ireti Kingibe has made a serious allegations about borrowing by the FCT administration without the required legislative approval. That allegation must be investigated, not because Kingibe is in the opposition, but because the money involved belongs to the Nigerian people. The law does not say that an APC minister can borrow without scrutiny, while an opposition politician must obey every rule. The law is supposed to be blind to party affiliations, and the Senate has a constitutional responsibility to ask questions. In fact, the Senate itself raised concerns when it approved the 2.285 trillion 26 FCT budget without a clear financing profile. Lawmakers warned that without knowing the revenue source, there could be a risk of future borrowing or overdraft without adequate legislative scrutiny. So why should Nigeria be told to stop asking questions? If Wike has done everything according to the law, excellent. Publish the document, show Nigerians the approval, show the borrowing agreement, show the legislative authorization, show the repayment terms, let the evidence speak. Okay? But if any borrowing was undertaken without the legally required approval, then this is not an APC issue, a PDP issue, or an ADC issue, or a Wike issue. It is an issue of Nigerian constitutions, of the rule of law. Nigeria cannot continue operating a system where the law is powerful against ordinary citizens, but negotiable when the political elite are involved. Okay? If a poor Nigerian owes a bank 100,000, the bank will fine him. If a small business violates a regulation, government will fine it. If an ordinary citizen fails to comply with the law, there are consequences. So why should public officials handling billions or trillions of naira operate in an environment where citizens cannot even simply ask questions or even determine how the money is being financed? We don't need accusations without evidence, but neither do we need government officials hiding behind political alliances to avoid legitimate scrutiny. All right? Wike deserves due process. Kingibe deserves to be heard. And most importantly, Nigerians deserve to see the documents. All right? Because in a democracy, the question is not where the minister belongs to a political party. The question whether is, whether he obeyed the law. Did he obey the law? And if our Senate refuses to ask the question because this minister is politically connected, then the problem is bigger than Wike. It means the institution designed to protect Nigerians has forgotten whom it represents. One important corrections I did make to this original argument. I wouldn't say yet. Okay? I wouldn't say yet Wike is taking loan without Senate approval. All right? I did say, okay, I did say Senator Ireti Kingibe alleges that the FCT Minister administration is taking loans without the required legislative approval. The allegation requires an immediate public audit and documentary verifications. That is much stronger. That is much stronger journalistically because you are attacking the lack of transparency without presenting an unproven allegations as an established fact. And there is already a documented reason for demanding answers. The Senate itself identified the absence of clear FCT revenue financing profile when it approved 2.285 trillion in the 2026 budget. All right. So the case have to be, or the claim have to be investigated. Okay. Senate increases, passes FCT 2026 budget. All right. That is documented. The budget passed by the Senate was not accompanied by details of its revenue source, prompting some lawmakers to start asking questions. The real rebuke, therefore, isn't Wike is guilty. I'm not going to go through that far for now. I wouldn't go through that far for now. The real rebuke, therefore, isn't Wike is guilty. It is, if everything is illegal, prove it. If everything is transparent, publish it. And if the Senate is doing its job, investigate it. That position is considerably harder for anyone to dismiss as partisan politics. Now, friends, here are my conclusions. These are my conclusions. Okay? So that I can round up. There is a legitimate accountability issue surrounding FCT minister, but I would not state as an established fact that Wike is currently taking loans without Senate approval, based solely on Senator Ireti Kingibe's allegations. I could not find it in the sources available to me today to conclude on those allegations. So, friends, it is troubling that if Wike did obtain loans without the legislative approval, then the country is gone. Okay? The country is gone. Where are we heading to? Where is Nigeria heading to? Who brought Nigeria to its nails? Since got independence, Nigeria has been from one bad leadership to the other. All right? From one bad leadership to the other. Having said all this, the legal framework is quite clear on borrowing. The Debt Management Office published borrowing guidelines state that the National Assembly approval is required for an external loans, while the Fiscal Responsibility Act restricts borrowing and requires appropriate legislative approval. For FCT borrowing specifically, the DMO guidelines requires an FCT Executive Committee approval and then the relevant FCT legislative authorizations and an applicable appropriations under the law. So, friends, this is where I'm going to stop. Thank you guys for watching. I rest my case.